Mark, what's going on, my man? Appreciate you taking the time.
Of course, man. Happy holidays, you and your awesome audience, man. It's great to be with you, man. Family coming to town in a couple of days. Looking forward to it, man. Looking forward to it. It's been fast and furious last few months, and gonna have some good time off with the fam, man. Our job as professionals now, Chris. It's like I am doing. I'm really kind of unplugging here in a minute, right? But our job is, I got shows today and tomorrow, right? I got shows today and tomorrow. You have shows this week. How can we stay focused on our jobs when we're really looking forward to that chance to just disconnect, right? So that's the challenge for ourselves, right? Like we've all been in 10th, 11th, 12th grade and like checked out of what's going on in class. Now we're professionals. We got to make sure we deliver some of our best shows over the next couple of days, even though we're really looking forward to all the goodies that Mom is bringing to town,
So, Mark, with that being said, I'll start you off with a zinger. I mentioned today, this afternoon, the famous Toastery Bowl will be taking place, which I don't know if you've ever had the famous Toastery. I lived in Charlotte for 4 years. Very, very good spot. But if you could name a bowl game, right, because we've got crazy bowl game names. If you could name a bowl game, is there anything in particular? What name would you give, like the Marc Ryan Bowl? What would be the nickname for that bowl game?
I got a couple that I really like, Chris, actually. It would be the hardest bowl to wash in your sink is the crusted over cornflakes bowl. Have you ever had a bowl where you had to wash out crusted over cornflakes that were like attached to the side of the bowl? Like a mussel is attached to a rock on the ocean. Those things don't come off, man. So I've always been a fan of the crusted over cornflakes bowl. As a Gator or a Gamecock fan, I'm sure we would accept a bid to that bowl right now. And also the Scrubbing Bubbles toilet bowl, Chris. Those are my two favorite bowl games. I can't tell you who's playing in this famous Amos Toaster Strudel Bowl that you're talking about. Who's playing today? I have no idea.
Honestly, I'd have to look it up. I literally still – we're going to find this out. I can't continue through the show without knowing.
By the way, what's
who's
up, Madison?
Playing in the game.
Good to see you, buddy. Appreciate the hello, and want to wish all of the Daily Crow listeners, man, a Merry Christmas and a really happy holiday. Whether you guys love us or hate us, you're here and you're tuned in, right? And the listeners have a right to vent. So regardless of your feelings for us, I appreciate you tuning in, right? To this show, to Offsides. And, the like or hate part doesn't matter so much as it does that you're tuned in. And we value and appreciate that more than you'd ever know. So thank you.
So for you and the audience, Mark, I doubt anybody would have been able to get this unless they looked it up. Old Dominion takes on Western Kentucky in the famous Toastery Bowl. So, hey, listen, it's football, hey, right? We're sitting here in the middle of July. We'll wish we had Old Dominion and Western Kentucky to pop on the TV in the afternoon and have that kind of on in the background, if you will. Mark, let's get into everything, man. Again, it's you think to yourself, okay, it's middle of December. Things have slowed down. We're kind of nestling up to the fire. Nothing's going. No. The craziness and the madness, I would almost argue, Mark, we're more busy right now and there's more things happening darn near than in season with this world of free agency that we've built in college football. Let's first, Mark, keep it in the Palmetto State, though. Gamecocks, I think what's interesting, Gamecocks with 9 commitments in the transfer portal or through the portal, they rank 6th overall right now. Clemson with 0. What do you make of that? What do you make of, because, we had seen Clemson offering some guys in the portal, and so you're thinking to yourself, okay, maybe Dabo's turned a new leaf. He's going to start embracing the portal. Your thoughts on who the Gamecocks have picked up and what Clemson's not doing in the transfer portal, how you think that could affect the rivalry in the two programs and as they go on their respective paths, if you will.
So my heart, Chris, absolutely loves what Dabo is doing, right? Like he is digging his heels in and saying, this is not the college football that I know. Cliff Ellis, head basketball coach at Coastal Carolina, just retired. We played his clip on CBS Sports Radio this weekend. Why? He said, I don't recognize this game anymore. There's no way to build continuity in college basketball. This is not the game that I know. He's telling you, he's he's throwing that cautionary bow out there about how awful this is. My heart loves what Dabo is doing. My head says that if you have designs on winning a national championship and you don't use the transfer portal, you better have a class in the top five. And Clemson does not. If you don't have a class in the top five, I think you've got to use it to supplement your roster. Now, I was reading the other day because it's one of my favorite pieces every year, Chris, the Bud Elliott blue chip ratio article. I read that every so often. And he says, what you see in terms of teams with heavy use of the portal is one of two scenarios. You see a brand new coach looking to jumpstart his new team, or you see a coach in trouble trying to save his job. Which of those two categories is Shane Beamer in?
I would say he's trying to save his job right now with a good season in 2024.
Okay, so he's like, those are Bud Elliott's words, right? Those are Bud Elliott's words. Is that, you're seeing coaches use it as a jumpstart or to save their jobs. I'm more in line with you that he's feeling the pressure. I differ from you a little bit, Chris, in that I think he could lose his job, perhaps even should lose his job if there's another losing record there. If this season produces another losing record, especially when you consider that there's 4 baked-in wins to the 2020. So how many games do you need to win? 2 games all year, because you have 4 wins already on the tally. Okay, you got to win 2 games all year. So with that being said, with the model that is in place, and as much as I don't like the, let's go to the highest bidder, Chris, you can't identify for me how South Carolina to Arkansas is a step up for Rocket. It's a step up in the in the account balance, right? But I'm not sure. Like, do they have better run blocking than Arkansas? No, they don't. What was lacking for Rocket Sanders in Arkansas? Does he ever say that? When is the press conference where he states what was lacking at Arkansas? What was lacking was the bank account at Arkansas. Okay. That said, that is the system. And South Carolina, that's the system at least right now. And South Carolina landed an impact player at a position of need. I would argue, Chris, that they may not have had RB1 or RB2 last season. Now they have RB1 and RB2. So has the team gotten better? Yes, the team has gotten better. And so I think Beamer's done a really, really nice job. I'm more fascinated, Chris, in seeing, does South Carolina beat Clemson in the actual high school recruiting rankings? Because the last time that happened was when? Anybody? Bueller? Fry?
I think I saw you post. It was like 2013, maybe 2014.
Close, 12th.
12.
2012.
Okay.
Per the 24/7 Sports Industry Composite Rankings, the last time the industry of recruiting rankings said that South Carolina had a better class than Clemson was 2012. So, is there any fish out there, Chris, that could push South Carolina over the top? Wouldn't that be a fascinating story? Imagine if you're Beamer, what you could flex if you said, last year we beat Clemson. This year we beat them for the first time in a dozen years in recruiting rankings. That would be a hell of a flex, right, for Beamer and the Gamecocks. And they're this close to being able to do just that.
I think even, Mark, to your point, even after losing the game at Williams-Brice Stadium, because of the way the game went, right, I think if you're able to win that recruiting battle, to your point, and finish ahead of the Tigers, that certainly would be another feather in your cap, and you could at least, I think, convince folks because of that, what you're doing in the portal, we're still trending in the right direction. We can still go up there to their place next year and beat them. You mentioned, Mark, why not? Let's go ahead and talk about it, because it feels like this happened forever ago because everything that happened with the portal and what have you. But last Wednesday night, we got the SEC schedules. We already knew who everybody was playing, but we got the actual schedules themselves. It's one thing to know who you're playing, Mark, but it's another to see, we got to go to Alabama and then to Oklahoma. It's like to see that on – and then, of course, I'm not getting any sympathy from you as a Gator man, but you've looked at that 2024 schedule and you have come to the conclusion that 5-7 or worse should get Shane Beamer canned. Is that correct?
100%. And that is not going to change. Okay. You can't convince me, all right, that in year 4, there's any excuse for having a losing record. year 4. But what's the excuse for that? You know, like, you can't convince me. Chris, I want us, when we solidify our decisions, and we may have already done that, I want us to stand by what we're saying. And that is, and you let me know if yours have changed. We've said 7-5 next year is a success. 6-6 is a disappointment. 5-7, and there's a new coach. Okay. And that means 7-5 and above is success. Now, I don't want to speak for you. I don't believe you said 5-7 and below is a new coach. You said 5-7 and below is failure. So that is the difference that we have. You can't tell me that I had a Gamecock fan last week, Chris, tell me 6-6 is success. Brother, 6-6 is 50%. You know, what grade is that on your in 8th grade for you on a test? That's 50%. At best, you could say 6-6 in the SEC is a C. You know, like, again, man, you know, I'll mention this to you, Chris, like, the expectations at South Carolina have been in the scrubbing bubbles toilet bowl for about the last 50 years. And the best way to elevate the program is to change that. I hear that when Gamecock fans lower expectations left and right. Gamecock football fans are the same thing as Clemson basketball fans. You know, Brad Brownell has sucked for 13 years. He starts 9-0. Can't fire him. Oh, 9-0. Chris, if you had a 13-year relationship, girl treated you awfully for 13 years, treats you well for 2 months, that means you shouldn't get rid of her? I mean, how does that even make any sense? Have some damn pride in yourselves. Mm-hmm. Have some expectations. Chris, to your point, what I saw you tweet out, and incidentally, I'd love your opinion on this. I mean, you said thoughts to the audience, but I never heard your opinion. You said, would you take Juice Wells back? And Chris, like, just take an ice pick and jam it in my retina. I was looking at the responses, and most of these poor, sad, stepped-on Gamecock fans wrote in that comments, yeah, oh, if he can help the team, we'll gladly have him back. If he can help the team, bro, he used you. He abused you. Some of you lost money on that guy that put money in the collective. You guys aren't attending South Carolina. You're attending What's the Matter You? What's the matter you? Come on, man. Have some pride. Have some standards. You know what you say to Juice Wells? The hell out of here. Don't let the door hit you where the good Lord splits you. I'm out. Mic drop.
For what it's worth, Mark, I would not have taken him back. I thought it was an interesting. I feel the same way about the Juice Wells thing, maybe even more strongly so than what I did or what I said last year about, because we were having a very similar conversation about Jaheim Bell when, you know, those rumors started. And my take on it then, you know, Jaheim Bell, one of his favorite slogans was, and I think still is, stand on business. And my take was, I think everybody should just stand on business. I think he should stand on business. I think South Carolina should stand on business, and they should wish each other well, or maybe not, and just keep it moving. And I thought this situation, to your point, Mark, was the exact same. I just think at some point you got to realize it's okay to expect more than the bare minimum. You know what I mean? And I think that, yeah, I know it makes people uncomfortable, but in this world of NIL and portal, and like I'm seeing people on social media, maybe you disagree with me on this, but I'm seeing stuff like, you know, we got people from On3 and 24/7 reporting when a guy or where a guy's going to school, and people are saying, oh, what about a kid's moment? How dare you steal the? I'm like, that was gone when free agency was introduced. Like if a reporter gets a scoop, he's reporting it. It's a kid's moment, be damned. Like, we are not in middle school anymore. This is not the soft, innocent college football you and I like. This is a business, right? And so, yeah, I mean, it's when a guy does what Juice Wells does, and I don't have any hate or animosity for Juice Wells in my heart by any means, but from a sports perspective and a business perspective, you keep it moving. And South Carolina, to your point, needs to have some dignity and keep it moving themselves too. Again, this is a bit of a moot point because he's now at Ole Miss, which perfect segue into it. We can talk about that. I mean, I think what Lane Kiffin, what Ole Miss are doing, you know, again, you can feel as iffy as you want about the portal, but it feels like they're building a super team. This feels like Florida State all over again. What they did last year, adding all these pieces, I mean, it's wildly impressive. And then you get Juice Wells. So
Yeah, what are you getting with Juice Wells though?
Yeah.
Are you getting
Good
what are you
point.
getting with Juice Wells?
But I
Are you
don't. Do you
getting a
think
guy
Lane
who's
Kiffin
making
cares? Do you think Lane Kiffin cares?
Are you getting a guy making $800K that's going to stub his toe and then be out for the year? You know, I mean, like, well, what are you getting? If he's cleared to play and he's not playing, you know, and the people that put money in the South Carolina portal, did they get that back? Do you know? Do I know? Is Juice Wells just able to cash a check? You know, where is Shane Beamer coming out and saying all those people who put money into our collective and some of that money went to Juice Wells, you will get your money back? Because what happened last year was ridiculous. Chris, anything else you buy, the product doesn't come, the product comes defective, you get your money back. Name me a product where you don't get your money back. And if you don't get your money back, that company isn't in business very long. You got hard-working Gamecock fans putting money into a collective to see a guy play football who is cleared to play, who is not playing, and then pieces out. And then you have these poor Gamecock fans who have been abused their whole lives with a bad football product, bad leadership, saying, yeah, we take him back. I don't get it. I don't get it, man. Juice Wells would be nowhere close to my program. And I can tell you that, Chris, in the same breath say, wow, Lane Kiffin said, we need some more NIL if we're going to compete because we can't recruit the way that Alabama and Georgia can. We got to get all these guys on the secondary market. They've delivered on the secondary market, and now Ole Miss just might be a contender.
And to your point, Mark, the thing with NIL right now is nobody gets their money back. The approach is when that happens, you must give more to compete and get the next guy. And so, I mean, that's
forget the fact that you just wasted $50,000. So right. Forget that fact, right? God, gosh, man, that's incredible to me. What are the numbers you're hearing that Juice Wells made at South Carolina, Chris? I heard $800,000.
So from what I heard, Mark, and I mean, I've talked to people, and I'm sure you have as well around Gamecock football. But what I've actually heard, it was less than people realized. But it was still, six figures. I've heard 350K. So not a million, not high sixes, but still, I mean, a lot of money. Let's not pretend like that's not a significant amount of money for especially a guy to not play and then dip out. So I don't know what Ole Miss is giving him. I mean, from the Gamecock folks I've talked to, they don't feel like there's any way that he's going to be as well taken care of. But, should we also think about the football side of things where maybe Juice Wells didn't believe in Lenoris Sellers throwing in the football and Jackson Dart is coming back and Lane Kiffin's your head coach and you're going to be in an elite offense. And I'm not justifying why Juice Wells made the right decision because what he did, it was the right decision for him, but obviously it's the way it happened is not commendable, but I'm just also giving all perspectives from this. So in regards to why he may have left, but the situation's a complete mess. And unfortunately, I think for all the good that NIL has done for guys, that is a situation where it shows the dark side of it, where Chris, players can take advantage of the system.
I don't mean to go all religious on you, okay? But even the Bible says your character is more important than your wealth, right? I would like to just send that message in a gift basket to Juice Wells. Your character is more important than your wealth. Would you say that's accurate to Juice Wells? I would not. And so, frankly, I think what he did is gross. And you couldn't be further away from that guy if you're a Gamecock fan. Not a single soul, not a single Gamecock fan should want that guy anywhere near the program. And when he comes to town, give him hell. Give him hell.
Mark, with National Signing Day upcoming Wednesday, you talked about recruiting rankings, the blue chip ratio, if you will. In your opinion, right? I don't know how big of a signing day guy you were. There's some people out there that really love it, right? Really get into recruiting and what National Signing Day is. With the portal and NIL, does it put a damper on it for you? Did you once look at National Signing Day as like this almost like national holiday, and now it's kind of like with the new age of football, it's not as big for a prospect to sign with your school? Do you still love it? Where do you stand on the National Signing Day that's upcoming on Wednesday?
Man, everyone's been acting, and Clemson fans especially, like Florida's losing DJ Lagway, and there's been not a single shred of credible evidence to that, right? This seems to be the new signing day, Chris, and I still get into it, and I'll tell you why. All right. The blue chip ratio is the thing that I've kind of latched onto. 3 of the 4 teams in the college football playoff have met the blue chip ratio. The one that hasn't is Washington. Bud Elliott says in the blue chip ratio article, and for those of you listening and saying, what is the blue chip ratio? The last 20 national champions in college football have all had a blue chip ratio of 50% or better, meaning at least half of the players on the team or more were 4 and 5-star players coming out of high school. That's been true for the last 20 national champions. Now, Bud Elliott says, is this going to remain unbeaten? He said eventually he thinks a team in the 40 percentile, 40% of their guys are blue chip, will win when they have a superstar transfer portal quarterback. Well, Chris, look what we have this year. Washington, Michael Penix Jr. The blue chip ratio says they can't win it, right? Because the talent isn't there. Part of the reason Florida State was kept out is because the committee didn't feel like the talent on the roster was there. Florida State was short of the blue chip ratio. The blue chip ratio is the minimum requirement that you need to be a national championship contender in terms of talent. So Texas meets it. Alabama meets it. Michigan meets it. Washington does not meet it. But Michael Penix Jr. means that, brother, they got a shot for the first time. So, and Chris, the blue chip ratio does not incorporate the transfer portal. And yet, even in the transfer portal era, it's still accurate. It's still like, so to me, what it tells me is the transfer portal is a complement, right? It's a side dish. It's not the entree. Your high school recruiting needs to be the entree. And that to me, Chris, is what it should be. If you are living and dying in the transfer portal, as Bud Elliott says, you're probably a new coach with a garbage roster, or you're a coach trying to save his job. And I think for the transfer portal to remain a roster complement, right, not a roster entree, is the right use of the portal. And, well, Marc Ryan, that's not what Florida State did, and Florida State isn't where they want to be now, are they? They're not.
So
nothing
how
beats recruiting.
How would you categorize Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss Rebels? I know that's a little bit different because they're still like top 20 nationally in recruiting. I think actually South Carolina is one spot ahead of Ole Miss in the SEC recruiting rankings, but Ole Miss still, it's not like they're putting together terrible recruiting classes. But I mean, how would you categorize them? Or do you feel like there's going to be one-offs every year to where maybe they're the exception to the rule that you just stated?
So
because it feels like Ole Miss is looking at what they did this year. They're looking at their schedule next year and saying, okay, we can go out, get 10 game changers. We're a playoff team. It might be a flash in the pan 1 year, but that's all we got to do. We just got to get there 1 year with the right roster. And unfortunately for FSU, to your point, I mean, if they didn't have the quarterback injury, it may have worked out for them.
Well, Chris, now that the playoff is 12 teams moving forward, why can't Ole Miss make it every year? You know, and people say, well, it's hard to get elite level athletes to come to Mississippi. Well, why? It's just because of a
Kiffin's
lack of
doing it. So Kiffin's doing it.
Right. So I mean, you get kids to come to Louisiana that are top end athletes. Why can't you get top end athletes to come to Mississippi? What's really the difference in those states? Right? Like what is really the difference? So my answer on Kiffin is he asked for more NIL money. He's gotten more NIL money. I don't like, Chris, enough about me to know that how you do things matters. And so Lane Kiffin is playing by the rules. He's tired of being at a disadvantage to the Alabamas and the Georgias of the world. I long for a day where there are guardrails for this stuff, and maybe the players are part of a revenue sharing plan as opposed to just everybody going to the highest bidder all the time. Maybe players are employees, but this is the system that we have right now. And whereas I don't love it, I can't argue with the fact that Ole Miss has dramatically improved its roster. And if you're looking at it outside looking in, man, they've got to be one of your 12 for the playoff next year, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, like if you're picking the 12 playoff teams for next season, is Ole Miss not in that top 12? I think they most certainly are.
I think especially, Mark, they definitely are when you factor in the fact that I don't think he's announced officially, but I'm pretty sure Jackson Dart, their quarterback, is going to be back. Quinshawn Judkins, good chance he's back. What they've added in the portal, what they're adding defensively, what Pete Golding was able to do in his first year as DC. Yeah, I think Ole Miss absolutely has got to be one of those teams you're looking at as one of your 12 for the playoff next year. Mark, there very well may be a good chance this is the last time we speak to you before the turn of the year, before the turn of the
Yeah,
calendar, if you will.
yeah.
I want to run through these SEC bowl games and get your picks. Can we do that? Can we just
Oh,
off the cuff
absolutely.
first
And Chris,
reaction?
yeah.
I know there's a lot of games obviously, but if you're cool with that, can we? There's
Oh,
9 games.
absolutely. No,
Okay.
absolutely, brother. Absolutely. So we will absolutely look forward to being back on with you in 2024. It feels weird to say that, doesn't it? It feels weird to say, see you in 2024, see you next year. But that's where we're at, man. That's where it is. We've done it. We've made it to the end of another great year. So yeah, man, let's rock and roll.
All right, cool. We'll start, Mark, with the Texas Bowl, Oklahoma State and Texas A&M.
Uh, Oklahoma State has a consistent head coach, right? This game means something to them. A&M is in a period of transition. A&M has more roster talent, even with all their defections. But at the same time, I think Oklahoma State has more continuity. I like what they're playing for more. Give me the Cowboys.
How about the Gator Bowl, Mark? Kentucky and Clemson. Again, these are two teams that we saw at the end of the season face off against South Carolina. Thoughts on that game, Kentucky and Clemson?
I think Clemson got jobbed with the opponents. I mean, I felt like they deserve better, man. How about Clemson LSU? All defense versus all offense. I mean, these bowl matchups, Chris, are the cure for insomnia. You know, we got bowl games going on, Chris. You don't even know you and I don't even know who's playing in the bowl games anymore. So I think Clemson wins pretty comfortably in this. The good thing about this one is Dabo does a great job of getting the kids ready to play. They always play like they're playing in the Super Bowl in these games. I think Mark Stoops and Kentucky are also motivated to go up against a brand name in Clemson. So I think this could be one of the better bowl games in terms of effort. I just think, Devin Leary, let's be honest, was a flop. Was he not? I mean, that was a total flop. This was a quarterback whose arm was good enough for the ACC, but not good enough for the SEC. And we saw it all bloody season. Clemson by double digits.
Clemson by double digits. Okay, let's move to the Cotton Bowl. Ohio State and Missouri. I think this has got the potential outside of the playoff to be maybe the best bowl game of bowl season. Buckeyes and Tigers. Who do you got?
I'm going Mizzou. I'm going Mizzou in this one.
A lot of opt-outs for Ohio State. A lot of their quarterback. A lot of
opt-outs.
Yeah.
Ton of opt-outs. And quarterback question in doubt. And the team that got jobbed, that in terms of motivation, it doesn't really play out that way. Man, we got screwed. We're going to come out with our hair on fire. That's not what we see historically in bowl history, Chris. We see the team that got jobbed look like they don't want to be there. Meanwhile, Missouri is very, very motivated. Ohio State has more talent, but I like Missouri in a close one. How about you? What do you think?
I'm picking Missouri as well. Again, I think one team in Ohio State would rather be anywhere else, and I think Missouri's fired up. I said this last week, Mark. If Ohio State wins or loses against Missouri, they're still Ohio State. What a win could do for the Missouri program, beating Ohio State, massive. And I think they're going to play with their hair on fire. I think Ohio State, again, that wasn't their goal. They don't want to be there. I think Mizzou's going to punch them in the mouth. So I've got the Tigers in that one as well.
Clemson, how about the Kentucky? Who you got? Clemson, Kentucky.
I'm picking Clemson. I'm picking Clemson. Sure. To your point, I think Clemson's defense, I just think Devin Leary, I think it's going to be a sloppy game, slugfest kind of game. We saw these two offenses against South Carolina, right? I think Clemson, I don't know if double digits, but I do like Clemson in the game to win that one. Okay, the Peach Bowl, Ole Miss and Penn State. We were just talking about them. Ole Miss and Penn State. Who do you got? By the way, win for Ole Miss would be their 11th win, first time in school history if they do it.
Going Ole Miss. Going hotty toddy in this one, Chris. Absolutely. James Franklin to me is the coach who's always the bridesmaid, never the bride. This is unfortunately a bridesmaid bowl. Lane Kiffin, let's be honest, Chris, these are bridesmaid teams, right? That's why Kiffin is in the portal. And so this game determines which of these two programs is best equipped to leave that status behind, right? To find there forever. And I think Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss are closer. Give me the Rebels in this one.
I like the Rebels as well, Mark. That's a good pick. How about the Music City Bowl? This might be the one that is the biggest snoozer of all. The Auburn Tigers and the Maryland Terrapins.
The correct answer is the Who Gives a Bleep Bowl, Diesel. I mean, Chris. I just called you Diesel, my bad.
No,
Who gives
good.
a bleep? I'll go Auburn. I like the end of season form, and I do think, whereas they weren't going to go to a great bowl game anyway, I do think they'll be pissed off that at the way that the Auburn game ended. SEC talent versus Big Ten talent. Give me Auburn in this one.
How about the Orange Bowl, Georgia and Florida State? This is a game that I think if played about a month ago would have been an all-time classic. Now, I'm not so sure what to expect from the Noles. Your thoughts on this one between the Dogs and the Seminoles?
Yeah, my thoughts are Georgia wins big, and that offers absolutely no evidence whatsoever for why Florida State should have been left out of the playoff. Mm-hmm. There are really lazy arguments out there. Oh, look, Georgia ran them. Looks like they didn't deserve. No. They deserve to be in the playoff based on what they achieved. Them being an underdog has no bearing on whether they deserve to be there or not. And what bothered me so much about what the committee decided was they decided that we think they're not the same team. They decided that was more important than evidence, which is their 13-0 body of work. And then the worst thing, Chris, is I keep getting told Florida State's strength of schedule was 55. What does that have to do with how good they are? Again, what could they have done about that? They play in the ACC. They scheduled LSU. They scheduled Florida. You're holding a schedule of 55 against them? What could they have done that they didn't do? And again, consistency is part of greatness, right? Alabama had crap games every month of the season. September to Texas, September to USF, October to Arkansas, beat them by 3. Arkansas won 1 SEC game. Please don't remind me who Arkansas beat. And then November against Auburn. Alabama had crap games every single month. How are they this great team? Consistency is a part of greatness, right? So there you go, man. I think Georgia wins that game big. I do.
How about LSU and Wisconsin and the ReliaQuest Bowl?
Why? Why is this the matchup? Why couldn't we ReliaQuest on something better than that? Chris, it's LSU big in this game. I mean, who cares? This is a Big Ten afterthought. But I mean, would you agree? LSU big in this one?
Yeah, I think it depends on does Jaden Daniels play. I don't know that we really know that. So if he does, I don't think Wisconsin has the horses even remotely to keep up in this one. How about the Citrus Bowl? You can't spell citrus without UT, right? Tennessee and Iowa. The over-under is 36.5, I think, if it's still that. I think the big question is, can Iowa even score double-digit points? I think Tennessee big in this one. Again, I know their defense is great, and Tennessee's not exactly world beaters, but how can you trust the Iowa offense, Mark, to do anything? So who do you like in the Citrus Bowl?
I like Tennessee. I strongly advise, Chris, you never to say to a woman, you're the only 10 I see. Okay. But Tennessee, this is one of the more intriguing matchups. And the NFL never gives you a matchup like this. Okay. All offense versus all defense. And we're getting that matchup. Tennessee just has too much firepower for Iowa, man. They just do. And whereas, I think it's really insulting to a Florida State to compare them to Iowa. Florida State has dudes. Iowa has a system. I don't think that's going to be enough. I think, Tennessee is able to get to a first digit 2 and not just a safety, so a 2-digit number that starts with 2. And Iowa's going to have a hard time getting to a 2-digit number, period. Right. So I do think Tennessee wins this game. And that's one of the ones I'm really looking forward to seeing, Chris. And yeah, I saw you drop in the old Spurrierism. You can't spell citrus without UT. There's a lot of programs out there. You might know 2 of them who would love to be in the Citrus Bowl right now.
Indeed. Mark, last one. the Alabama Crimson Tide taking on the Michigan Wolverines. This one, of course, the game we are all looking forward to. New Year's Day, 5 p.m. Eastern kickoff on ESPN. And again, the setting, Mark, couldn't be better out in Pasadena at the Rose Bowl. Your thoughts on this one? Who wins between the Crimson Tide and the Wolverines?
If you're a Michigan fan, you're nervous because you've seen the track record of Nick Saban with all this time to prepare, right? It never works well for the opposition. That said, Chris, I picked Michigan as my national champion when the year began. You don't stick with a bad pick if it's a bad pick, but I think it's a good pick. I've studied the national champions the last 10 years. And the last 10 years, Chris, the team that has won the national championship has been in the top 10 in either total offense or total defense. Michigan is number 2 in total defense. Additionally, they're in the top 3rd in total offense, which is the other requirement. You got to be top 10 in one, top 3rd in the other. So right around 45 or 50. Michigan meets the criteria. So the other 2 schools that did were Georgia and Oregon, and they're both out. So I'm going to go with what history tells me. I'm going to go with what my preseason pick was, and I'm going to say Michigan finds a way to get it done. A team as inconsistent as Alabama, whose best is an A+, capable of beating Georgia, and whose low is capable of struggling with Arkansas and USF. I don't think that the lack of consistency beats Michigan. I also think, Chris, it's like nobody's mentioning that Alabama beat Georgia by 3 with its 2 best receivers hobbling throughout that whole game. You know, we just give Alabama credit being number 1, whereas like when that game is played, Alabama-Michigan, if the opponent was Georgia, I think you'd pick Georgia because now Ladd McConkey isn't limping. Now Brock isn't limping, right? And if they played that game again, and you said to me, Mark, the line is Georgia -6.5, I'd take Georgia and lay the points. And I would say, Georgia, man, I got a healthy receiving core and I have the revenge factor. Give me Georgia, right? So, I mean, Alabama had a perfect storm, a confluence of events going on. I'll take Michigan to win that game. How do you see it?
I hate to be the one to have the cop-out answer if I haven't made my pick yet. I really haven't. You know, Mark, I don't know, man. Somebody once told me you don't get rich betting against Nick Saban, and I just think with a month to get ready, they are inconsistent. I guess the question is, do you bank on Nick Saban with extra time having Alabama ready to play at the best version of them we have seen versus the Jordan Hare having to survive via a miracle against a bad Auburn team version? So it's like, what version of Bama will you get? I got to roll with Bama, man. I got to roll with the Crimson Tide. I doubted Bama all year, man. I picked Bama to go 9-3. I picked Georgia in the SEC title. I have been burned by Bama so much this season. If I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down with the Crimson Tide this time, man. I can't do it again. So we'll see. I think it's going to be a classic, though. I think it's going to be
an Alabama-Texas rematch for the national championship,
which would be electric. And Mark, nobody would love that more than Greg Sankey over at the SEC office. Yeah. 2 SEC teams technically in the national title. Marc Ryan of the Fan Upstate, Offsides of Marc Ryan. I'll be jumping on your show later today, so we really are double dipping today. But Mark, if we don't speak to you again on these airways before the turn of the calendar, Merry Christmas to you first off, but Happy New Year. Appreciate everything you did for us in 2023, my friend. All the great memories, the segments, the value you provided our audience, and thank you so much for having me on. I value our relationship. I value our friendship. Truly means the world. And again, I think our audience would say the same. Although sometimes you get under their skin, I think they appreciate the fact that you challenge them, you provide different perspectives, you bring the heat, you bring the banter, and I can't say thank you enough, man. Truly, it's been a pleasure.
I want to wish Merry Christmas to most of your audience, Chris. Most of your audience, I send Merry Christmas.
What would you give the bottom 10%ers for Christmas, Mark? A lump of coal or something worse?
I'll see what I can think of. Buddy. No, man. I truly value the friendship and the relationship as well, man. And thank you very much for having me on all year long. It's a fun time. You know, guys, in this business, there's people who just vibe with in an on-air capacity. And Chris and I just crack the mic and we just go. You know, we just go. And I end up saying, man, like that was a really good subplot, or I really like when the conversation went there. And I end up bringing that back to offsides as well. So this doing this has become kind of show prep for my own show, because I always end up incorporating some of the discussions into our show. So, guys, Merry Christmas, and we'll see you on the Daily Crow in 2024. We'll see you next year.
Mark, I appreciate you, man. We'll talk soon.
All right, take care, guys. Bye bye.
Take care.